Welcome back to OJS for Editors. In the previous class, we saw the submission process from the point of view of the author, Fatima. Now it's time to switch back to the perspective of the editor, Chinadu. As the editor, Chinadu is largely responsible for coordinating and overseeing the work of bringing the journal issue to publication, and for making big-picture decisions about the content of the journal. One of Chinadu's jobs as the editor is to respond to a new submission, and to do an initial review to decide if it's appropriate for the journal. Then, if it fits the journal's scope, he will assign a section editor to the submission to see it through the peer review process and, if accepted, the editing process, at which point he will take over, again to manage the paper's publication in an issue. In this lesson, we'll focus on the initial decision about whether the submission fits the scope of the journal, and look at the pages available to the editor to manage submissions. This is the first stage of processing a submission. Remember that the decision about whether to actually publish the article comes much later in the process, after peer review has been completed, and the editor has considered the peer reviews and reviewer recommendations. Chinadu knows that his journal has received a new submission thanks to an email notification that was automatically sent by OJS when Fatima uploaded her article to the journal website. Joe is now going to walk us through the process in OJS.
When Chinadu has logged into the journal, he sees 3 submission queues on the editor homepage where submissions await processing by various members of the journal team: unassigned, in review, and in editing. There is also a link to the submission archive. As each stage of the editorial process is completed, a submission will automatically move to the corresponding queue. The editor can view which articles are at each stage by clicking on the link for that queue. Also note that there's a search engine that can be used to find a submission. In our example, there's only one, but in practice you could have hundreds to sort through, in which case the search engine is indispensable. However, in this example, Chinadu can simply observe that the new submission is an unassigned queue, which has the number 1 beside it. Next, Chinadu clicks the title of the article to begin working on the submission. This takes him to the submission summary page. Here he can make an initial assessment of the submission to decide if it matches the scope of the journal and is worth sending to the peer review stage. To do this, he takes a look at the metadata provided by the author, such as the title and abstract. If he needs more information, he can examine the full text of the submission by clicking the link next to Original File under Submission. He would then save the Word document and open it in his word processor. If the submission is obviously unsuitable for the journal, such as when the subject matter doesn't match the journal's scope, Chinadu can click Reject and Archive Submission in the middle of the page. He would then be able to send a form email notifying the author of the decision to reject the submission. We will see some examples of the form emails OJS automatically generates later in this course. If you're interested in seeing the steps involved in creating these standard email messages, you can learn more in the OJS for Journal Managers course, Module 14. But in this case, Chinadu decides that Fatima's article matches the scope of the journal and should be accepted for peer review. At this point, he will want to check that the author has assigned the article to the correct section of the journal. If it should go in a different section, he can change it using the menu and by clicking the Record button afterward. It is essential that the editor record this change for it to take effect after he leaves the submission summary page. In this case, Fatima has assigned it to the correct section, so he leaves the section as it is. Next, Chinadu can make any obvious changes to the metadata that are required by clicking Edit Metadata. For example, he may want to add an additional keyword. At the bottom of the page, under Display, there is also an option to omit the author names from the journal table of contents. The default setting is created by the journal manager, but the editor can override the setting if desired. This feature is useful for editorials and letters, where the author's name is usually omitted from the table of contents. When Chinadu is finished, he makes sure to click Save Metadata.
And that brings Chenadu to the end of his work checking a new submission. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Ilele lo benela iye. Ilele lo benela